All right, so we're here for part 3. God help all of us, because it starts getting juicy. Again, my grandparents are really starting to fight. And I mean screaming matches over the fact that my grandmother wouldn't cook my grandfather's beans the way his mommy did. And of course, I was very empathetic. I, a lot of people say it's being an empath. Maybe. A lot of people hear empath and think Twilight. But I really hated the conflict because before I went to Tyler, my grandfather had this mask on where everything was fine. Now all of a sudden that fucker was ripped off like Phantom of the fucking Opera. But I was still homeschooled and he was traveling a lot. And my grandmother thought it'd be a good idea for us to travel with him, get me out and about. Because all of a sudden now my mother was working a lot and not there, and really beginning to show signs of abuse. Again, I didn't know. I thought it was me, it wasn't me. So, and then my 2 older brothers are working. My one brother's in the military and gone now, and my other brother is working all the time. So they're like, we need to keep her stimulated. We need to keep her with us. I didn't know why. But we're going to find out together. So we were traveling a lot. And when we traveled, he was working. And he was in Darth Vader mode. Everything, every little weird knick-knack doodad he got, it was either U.S. Marines or it was Darth Vader. I didn't realize the name Darth Vader in the banking industry was the term that they used for my grandfather. Because he was one harsh motherfucker. And I remember very distinctly, you know, when you're 6, you're making core memories. And I remember The Lion King being the first real film that was more than just it's a movie, there's a million other things going on. The Lion King brought a lot of truth to the table. I always say, The Lion King taught me the most valuable lesson I would ever learn. That the worst monsters and villains you will ever encounter aren't always far away. They're not outside. Sometimes they sit right at your dinner table. And I didn't realize how relevant that would be. But it struck a chord with me. It really did. Because you see the beauty and the grandeur of the music and everything, and it evokes this wonderful Shakespearean story of loss and betrayal and greed and hate. And to a very young child who's watching everything crumble, it spoke to me. I was that kid saying, well, if Scar was older, why did he get passed over? What was wrong with him? It bothered me. Because he was obviously older. Obviously. Why was he thrown out? Did his mom like the other sibling better? I remember very vividly. Please try trying to make love to the cat. The cat does this thing where she'll lick his face, and then he'll grab her and try to make that sweet, sweet music. Woohoo! Echolalio's fun. That's where you echo noises. So we traveled all over Arkansas and all over Texas and Oklahoma for this job. But I remember this one car trip, he had been picking and nagging on her all day. She was stupid. She was an idiot. I was too loud. Why wasn't I quiet like he was when he was a kid? And it was so bad. Once we got to the hotel, my grandmother grabbed me and said we have to get away from him. And the only place that was open was a movie theater. And I remember she said, Lion King's on. It's already started. You want to go? And I remember saying, yeah, anything. I remember saying that. But the Lion King was really cutting edge when it was coming into the new digital animation stage. Aladdin really started bringing that out. The flying carpet ride, everything had to have special computer programs written for it. Jill, remember. And they kept it in the new remake of The Lion King as well, where the wildebeest crests that hill. And you hear that one, I believe it's a violin note. It evokes the same level of terror I had whenever my grandfather came home. 'Cause you know it's going to be Pat. But, like, they had to have a completely new computer code written to do the wildebeest scene. The stampede scene in and of itself took months, not just to orchestrate and animate, but to put into computer programs. Disney was changing. And what a better way to bring this new animation and this wonderful continent in, but with something I would fall in love with forever, and that would be Shakespeare. To this day, Twelfth Night is still my favorite. But it's the family betrayals that always stick close. And I remember seeing that movie. We must have seen it 5 or 6 times in theaters. Whenever my grandfather started his tyrannical rants, it was, let's go. We have to go. And from that movie, I learned your family is not safe. Your family doesn't necessarily have to love you. To this day, I think there are 2 moments in Disney that have never left my brain. One of which, when Maleficent turns into the dragon, and the second is when Simba's running away, and Scar is sitting there among the ash and the rubble, doesn't even turn around to look at the hyenas, and just says with this cold, flippant tone, kill him. I remember sitting in a theater every time, seeing that, seeing the look on his face, almost like it was an afterthought. Kill him. And knowing I was going to be different than the rest of my family. Not because it was cold and calculated and would have been effective if you'd had better help, but I understood. At 6, I understood. You have to wipe out the threat to what you want. I understood that cruelty. And he's always had a little warm place in my heart. He was willing to do what needed to be done. And then move on, like a psychopath. That's when I knew I wasn't going to fit into this family, but I knew what it would take to survive it. Because then, everybody started turning on everybody, and it was full-blown war.